The pediatric skeleton, it differs from the adult skeleton both physiologically and anatomically. And Mercer Ran, one of the eminent pediatric orthopedic surgeons, once commented that children aren't just little adults, and you need to take this into consideration when managing their injuries. Children's bones are growing, and they have tremendous capacity to correct themselves in many ways, and so you need to be alert and attuned to this in determining how you're going to manage these injuries and what may or may not need to be done for them. Whereas in the adult population, certain fracture patterns or configurations that might mandate surgery in the child could conceivably be left alone to correct themselves if given sufficient time. The child's skeleton is different from that of an adult in the sense that it's still growing. It's growing from a region called the physis, or the growth plate. And that affords the child's skeleton considerable opportunity to correct and resolve deformity or displacement in and of itself. Whereas in a similar sort of fracture configuration that you might see in an adult, which would mandate surgical intervention, in the child, if you've got an awareness of the residual growth and the capacity of the skeleton to correct itself, you can conceivably manage that similar sort of injury non-operatively with cast immobilization and ongoing follow-up. Non-accidental injury is tricky, and it's a potential minefield because there's obviously severe consequences for proceeding down a particular path or avenue of exploration, but it's absolutely necessary because a child, by virtue of their age, won't necessarily be able to tell you or recount what happened, and so then, as the clinicians, we're charged with investigating the process and marrying up the facts as presented to us, taking into consideration the child's age, things like their ambulatory capacity, the nature of the fracture that's been sustained. If you take, for instance, a femoral fracture or thigh bone fracture, a non-ambulatory child, that should immediately raise suspicions about the potential causes or mechanisms of that, because a non-ambulatory child, you can't slip, twist, fall as a 4-year-old can, for instance. And so you need to be alert to that. And then you look at the fracture configuration, whether it's a spiral fracture, which is reflective of a twisting or a torsional force that may well be caused by unnecessary or excessive twisting to the limb, or other injury patterns that we sometimes see, unfortunately, things like corner fractures, which are reflective of a whiplash type injury. So a limb not necessarily being grasped or held, but a child being forcibly shaken, inflicting or kind of unnecessary or excessive forces across a flailing limb. And one needs to be alert to both the age of the child and the type of fracture that you see, and marry up both those elements that are suggested as causative mechanisms with what you know to be a plausible mechanism or a plausible causative force. The pediatric expert can provide guidance on what sort of fracture patterns might reasonably expected in a child of that age, or those that are suspicious for inflicted injury. Unfortunately, the incidence of non-accidental injury does appear to have increased in the wake of the COVID pandemic, and data from the NSPCC would suggest that in excess of 23,000 cases were reported between 2019 and 2020. And of course, that's only cases that were reported. Unfortunately, it's likely to be the case that there were more children who were the victim of abuse than we actually know.